It happened on a Friday evening in Seattle. One of those misty, gray-skied nights that makes the whole city feel like it's wrapped in wet cotton. I'd gotten to the rooftop restaurant about 20 minutes early for a business dinner. Some new client we were trying to land. Nothing revolutionary. Just a typical pitch over overpriced steak and half-hearted wine. I remember standing near the glass doors leading to the terrace, watching the rain smear soft lines across the city's lights. For a few seconds, I didn't feel like a husband or a professional or even a person, just an observer, blurry-eyed and vaguely detached. It's funny how those moments sneak up on you, just before everything breaks. Since I was early, the hostess gave me a table to wait. Quiet spot, tucked by the window, candles flickering low. I remember pulling out my phone to double-check the time, maybe skim my notes. Then I saw her. Emily. My wife. She walked in with another man. At first I thought, no, I hoped that I was wrong. That it was someone who looked like her. Maybe a distant cousin or just a stranger who wore her coat and moved like she did. But no. I'd know that walk anywhere. That stride, half confidence, half grace. Her hair was tied back in that low bun she always did when she wanted to look effortlessly composed. The curve of her jaw. Her fingers, playing with her necklace. It was her. And she hadn't come alone. She hadn't seen me. Or maybe she had and just didn't flinch. That possibility would gnaw at me later. She and the man were seated one table away, one table. Not across the restaurant. Not out of sight. Right there. Like the universe wanted to make sure I saw everything. He wore a navy suit, sharp and slim-fitted. Charcoal tie, polished shoes, the whole image. Like someone who reads GQ unironically and calls everyone man or brother. They sat close. Too close. I told myself at first that maybe it was work-related. Maybe he was a client. Maybe it was a mentoring thing. Maybe it was a big misunderstanding, and I was being paranoid. But that illusion didn't last long. She was laughing. Not polite, business laughing. This was something else. Her whole body leaned into him when he spoke. Her hand brushed his arm. When he said something, she tilted her head back and laughed like he'd whispered a secret she'd been dying to hear. And then she smiled. Wide open. It was that smile that did it. The kind that lights up your whole face. The kind I hadn't seen in months. And it wasn't mine anymore. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they're free. When they've stepped out of one life and into another. And that's when I realized I wasn't even there. I was air. A memory. I could have walked right up to her and I don't think she would have flinched. I think she would have looked through me like glass. My heart didn't shatter in that moment. It slowed. Froze. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was this cold, surreal clarity. Like my brain wanted to protect me from how much it was about to hurt. My hand slid into my jacket pocket. I felt the ring warm from my skin, heavy. I pulled it off without thinking. It made this faint metallic sound as I held it between my fingers. I looked at her again, still laughing, still leaning into him. I stood, walked over. Quiet. No drama. Just stepped beside their table like I was another waiter. I dropped the ring gently into her wine glass. It slid down the side and landed with a soft clink at the bottom, resting in the red liquid like a coin in a wishing well. She didn't even notice. Not at first. I turned and walked out. My phone buzzed as I stood waiting for the elevator. But I didn't look at it. Couldn't. I felt hollow, like something in me had just stepped out and left me behind. The doors opened, and I stepped in. The ride down felt longer than it should have. Too quiet. Like the building was holding its breath with me. By the time I stepped out onto the street, the rain had picked up. I didn't have an umbrella. Didn't care. I walked 2 blocks before I stopped and realized I had nowhere to go. I was supposed to be having dinner with people who had no idea my life had just split in two. I texted my colleague and said I was sick. Maybe I was. When I got home, the house felt unfamiliar. The furniture, the pictures on the walls, the scent of her perfume faintly clinging to the hallway. It all felt borrowed, like I was trespassing in someone else's life. She walked in around 10 p.m. Hair dry. No umbrella. No guilt in her eyes. "Oh, hey," she said, like I was just another roommate she didn't expect to see. She hung up her coat, placed her purse on the counter, then walked over and kissed my cheek. It was automatic, distant, like muscle memory. I didn't say anything. She poured herself a glass of wine. White, not red. So she hadn't drunk from the glass I dropped the ring into. I wondered if she'd left it there, sitting on the table like a ghost of a promise she never meant to keep. "You okay?" she asked after a while. "You're quiet." "Long day," I said. I don't know why I lied. Maybe I wanted to see how far she'd go. She leaned against the kitchen island, glass in hand, looking as calm as ever, like nothing had happened. "How was your dinner?" I asked finally. She didn't flinch. "Just a client. Pretty standard stuff. Boring, actually." She shrugged. "I probably could have skipped it." That was the moment I knew. I nodded slowly. "Huh." She studied me for a second. "You sure you're okay?" I looked at her, trying to find the person I married. I saw someone who knew how to lie so well. She didn't even blink. "You ever feel like you're watching your life happen from outside your body?" I asked. She tilted her head, smiled, that same practice smile, and said, "Mark, you've been overworking yourself again. You're just tired. You need to sleep." She walked upstairs, glass in hand, and left me standing there. She flipped the narrative with the ease of someone who'd done it before, took the spotlight off her and put it on me. My stress, my burnout, my imagination. She didn't deny it directly, that would have given it power. No, she reframed the whole thing until I was the one who had to defend my own sanity. And I let her. I sat on the couch that night, staring at the blank TV screen, wondering what kind of person can smile like that. Smile like the person they promise forever to is just gone. Maybe I'd been gone a long time. Maybe I just hadn't noticed until now. After that night at the restaurant, I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. And worse, I started seeing everything I hadn't allowed myself to notice before. That one moment of clarity, of her smiling like I didn't exist, ripped the blinders clean off. Things that once felt like quirks or one-offs or stress-related forgetfulness. They snapped into place like puzzle pieces. The picture they formed wasn't pretty. You spend enough time with someone, and you learn to ignore things. Not because you're oblivious, but because you love them. Or maybe more honestly, because you want to keep loving them. And love makes you generous with your explanations. She's tired. She's distant because work is hard. She's quiet because she needs space. But after that rooftop evening, my generosity was gone. The following morning, I woke up before her. I watched her sleep, and I didn't feel warmth. I felt distance. Like we weren't in the same bed anymore. We were just two people occupying similar coordinates. I went downstairs, made coffee, and tried to shake off the weight pressing into my ribs. But even the small sounds, her footsteps above me, the way the faucet squeaked when she brushed her teeth, they felt like echoes from another room, another life. Over the next few days, the cracks I'd been ignoring became impossible to look away from. The work trips. God, the work trips. They'd started about 2 months back. Last minute, barely any details. "We've got a client in Vancouver," or "I'll be in Milwaukee for the weekend," just helping Jenna with a campaign. Back then, I believed it. Why wouldn't I? Emily had always been driven. Her agency did a lot of travel. It made sense. Except now, with my eyes wide open, I started thinking about her cousin in Milwaukee. She'd always say she was staying with Carly, a cousin I'd only met twice in 8 years. So I did the unthinkable. I searched for Carly's name on Facebook. Deactivated. Then I checked Instagram. Nothing. Twitter. Nada. Emily always used to tag Carly in old posts from years ago. Christmas dinners, family BBQs. I scrolled back far enough to find one. Cousin Time Red Heart from 2019. I tapped the tag. User not found. Carly didn't just disappear. She was erased. Or never there to begin with. Then came the phone. 4 years, Emily's phone lived face up on the counter or on the coffee table. Notifications popped up like weeds. Texts from coworkers, messages from her mom, calendar reminders. But suddenly, the phone was face down. Always. Locked. And when I asked about it, casually like I wasn't choking on suspicion, She smiled and said, "New work policy. Client confidentiality." She even sounded annoyed, like I should have known that. I didn't say anything, just nodded. But something inside me twisted. Kept happening. One night we were watching a movie. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She flinched. I looked at her. She didn't look back. The screen was still dark. Face down, of course, and she didn't check it until I went to the kitchen. I watched from the hallway. She swiped it open fast, typed something, then set it down again, like it was hot, like it burned her. I walked back in and asked, "Who was that?" She laughed. "Spam call. I've been getting so many lately." At 11:40 p.m. From spam. I nodded again. Same stupid, silent nod. Then there was the perfume. She'd always worn the same scent. Something light, floral, nothing dramatic. But lately there was something else. Something spicier, heavier. It wasn't a bad smell. It just wasn't her. Or at least not the version of her I knew. The first few times I didn't comment. Then one night I did. I asked when she changed perfumes. She blinked. "Oh, it's the same one." "It smells different," I said. She paused. "Ha, must be the new bottle." And that was that. But it wasn't. Because later that week, I found a small shopping bag buried in her closet, behind a stack of old scarves. It was from a lingerie boutique, high-end stuff. The kind that comes wrapped in tissue paper and gilt. The receipt was still in the bag. It was dated just 2 weeks ago. She told me it was from months ago. Part of a bundle, she said. But I knew what I'd found. And I knew I'd never seen that lingerie. My stomach turned as I put the receipt back and returned the bag to its hiding spot. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. And I got it. One evening I came home early. She wasn't expecting me. I walked in through the garage, quiet. Her voice echoed from the living room. Soft, muffled. Like she thought she was alone. "No, I told him I was at a team dinner." "Yeah, he doesn't suspect anything." Then a pause. A low laugh. I stepped out into the hallway. She turned, startled. "Hey," she said, fumbling with her phone. "Didn't hear you come in. Who were you talking to?" She blinked. "Oh, just Jenna. From work." That same line. That same lie. I didn't ask more. Didn't need to. Her voice had gone flat, robotic. Like she'd rehearsed this a dozen times. Maybe she had. Maybe I was just one audience in a long line of S***ers. But here's the part that still haunts me. I wanted to believe her. Even after everything, I still wanted to cling to the version of Emily I married. The one who curled up beside me during storms. The one who danced barefoot in the kitchen on Saturday mornings. The one who cried during Pixar movies and held my hand at her father's funeral like it was the only thing keeping her upright. That Emily was gone. And maybe she'd been gone for a while. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I didn't want to see how she'd stopped asking about my day. How she forgot my promotion date entirely. Didn't even send a text. I didn't want to see how every kiss became air. How every hug felt like routine. How she started saying, "I love you," like a reflex, not a truth. I didn't want to see that she was slipping away. Or that maybe she'd already left. I started noticing small things too, little tells, the kind only someone close would clock. Her nails were suddenly always done. Professionally. French tips. No chips. She'd never been like that before. She'd gone from low maintenance to manicured overnight. New clothes. Subtle but different. Less cozy, more sleek. Stuff that hugged her frame tighter. Tops she never would have worn around me. She said it was just updating her style. Said she needed to feel more confident at work. I nodded again. Always nodding. That was my role now, the silent, smiling prop in her stage play. But the worst part wasn't the lies. It wasn't even the cheating. It was how easily I believed her back then. How many times she looked me in the eye and told me nothing was wrong. How many times I let it go. How many times I tucked away that sick feeling in my gut and told myself, she'd never do that. Because believing the lie felt safer than facing the truth. I started drinking more. Not heavily, not yet, but just enough to take the edge off. 1 whiskey after work. Then 2. It dulled the ache, blurred the questions, helped me sleep. I stopped bringing things up, stopped asking where she was going, stopped wondering who she was texting. I think I hoped that if I went silent, she might come back. Like if I stopped pushing, she'd remember what we had. But she didn't. She just slipped further into the distance, into a life that didn't include me. And still, I didn't confront her, because I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. Something I couldn't explain away with exhaustion or paranoia. And soon, I'd get it. But for now, I lived in the space between suspicion and certainty, a quiet purgatory. I went to work, I came home, and I played the role of the husband she used to love. I smiled when I had to, slept beside her like I wasn't dying inside. I told myself I was gathering strength. But really, I was already mourning her, mourning us, and she didn't even notice. The truth didn't arrive with a confrontation or a confession. It came quietly on a Tuesday morning, disguised as nothing more than a notification. I was already at work when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. Just attachments. 4 of them. For a few seconds, I stared at the screen without opening anything. My stomach tightened in a way I'd started to recognize. That slow, sinking sensation, like stepping onto a stair that isn't there. Part of me already knew. Another part begged me to ignore it, to swipe it away and keep pretending I could still save whatever was left. I opened the first image. A hotel room. Neutral decor. Beige walls. Generic artwork. The kind of place you forget the moment you leave. But draped over the back of a chair was a scarf I recognized instantly. Gray cashmere. Thin black trim. I gave it to her last Christmas. She'd worn it all winter. Said it made her feel safe. I could see a corner of the bed, unmade. 2 pillows. 2 glasses on the nightstand. My hands started shaking. The second image loaded. A mirror selfie. Her reflection caught at an angle, hair down. Makeup done differently than she ever wore around me. She was leaning into a man's chest. His arm wrapped around her waist. Same man from the restaurant. Navy suit guy. Only now he wasn't wearing a suit. Just a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. Casual. Int asterisk mate. Familiar. Her face wasn't hidden. She looked happy. Not relieved. Not nervous. Happy. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not explosively, but like a slow tear spreading wider with every breath. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stared. The third attachment was a screensh asterisk T. Boarding passes. 2 names. Her name. His. Seats next to each other. Departure, Seattle. Destination. Portland. Weekend flight. The same weekend she told me she was attending a marketing seminar. The same weekend she texted me goodnight from a hotel bed that wasn't ours. The 4th image finished it. A hallway. Hotel carpeting. Bad lighting. Her hand gripping the front of his shirt. His mouth on hers. No attempt to hide. No blur. No ambiguity. That was it. No context needed. No explanation possible. Below the photos were message screensh asterisk TS. Their messages. Weeks worth. Conversations I was never meant to see. She said I was starting to get suspicious. She said she needed to be more careful. She joked about my work schedule, about how easy it was to redirect my attention. She told him I was a good man, just not paying attention anymore. I closed my phone and sat there, staring at my desk. I don't remember how long I stayed like that. Minutes, maybe longer. The office sounds faded into background noise. Keyboards clicking, someone laughing down the hall, a printer humming. Normal life continuing around me while mine collapsed in absolute silence. It wasn't a mistake. That realization landed harder than the images themselves. This wasn't a drunk kiss. Not a moment of weakness. Not a lapse in judgment she'd regret the next morning. This was coordinated, planned, sustained. She'd built an entire parallel life and managed it with precision. I thought back to all the times she told me I was imagining things. All the times she reframed my questions as stress, paranoia, insecurity. All the times she made me doubt my own instincts. She hadn't just cheated. She'd gaslit me, And she was good at it. I didn't leave work early. I didn't call her. I didn't confront anyone. I finished the day on autopilot, responded to emails, sat through meetings, smiled when required. It was like my body was moving forward while my mind stayed locked in that moment, her hand gripping his chest, like she was afraid to let go. When I got home, she wasn't there yet. I sat at the kitchen table, phone face down this time. The irony didn't escape me. I didn't want to look at it again. The images were already burned into me, permanent. She came home around 7. "Hey," she said, setting her keys down. Same tone, same casual warmth. "Long day." I looked at her and felt nothing. That scared me more than anger would have. I watched her move through the house like she belonged there, like she hadn't dismantled everything we were piece by piece. She asked if I wanted dinner. I said no. She shrugged and poured herself a drink. We sat in the same room, less than 10 feet apart, and she had no idea I knew everything. That night, she slept beside me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every lie, every smile, every moment I'd chosen trust over doubt. I felt stupid, not because she cheated, but because she made it look so easy. By morning, something in me had shifted. I wasn't angry. I was done. There was no confrontation left to have. No question left unanswered. The proof hadn't just broken my trust. It had led the illusion I'd been clinging to. I finally understood the difference between someone who feels guilty and someone who feels entitled. She felt entitled. And once I saw that, there was no going back. I didn't know how I was going to leave yet. I didn't know when. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The marriage was already over. She just didn't know it yet. You'd think the moment I saw those photos, those messages, that it would have sparked rage. Some uncontrollable, chest-thudding fury that demanded confrontation. Slammed doors, screaming matches. But it didn't. That's what surprised me most. There was no fire. Just quiet. Stillness, actually. Like the moment after a storm, when the air is too calm, too clean. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw her things onto the lawn. I didn't even call anyone. I just sat in that truth, let it settle into my bones like cold water. And once I was submerged in it, I started making plans. The first thing I did was rent a storage unit on the other side of town. Nondescript, climate-controlled, monthly lease. I didn't tell anyone. Not family, not friends. It felt like the first decision I'd made in months that was completely mine. No second-guessing. No hesitation. Just quiet resolve. After work, I started packing. A box here. A box there. I'd carry them out piece by piece while she was at work dinners or running errands. It felt like erasing a life in slow motion. I started with the memories. Our wedding album. The framed photo of us in Banff. The one where we were laughing in the snow, her cheeks red from the cold. Our anniversary cards, still in the top drawer of the nightstand. I packed it all carefully, as if handling something that could break. Because that's what it was, the last fragile pieces of a lie I used to believe. I boxed up the keepsakes she'd given me over the years. A handwritten note she once left in my gym bag. "Proud of you always." A keychain from our first trip to the coast. A little clay heart she made in a pottery class, before we were even engaged. I don't know why I didn't throw them away. Maybe part of me needed proof later. Not of what she did, but of what I'd survived. I changed my passwords. Bank accounts, streaming services, cloud drives. I opened a new checking account in my name alone and quietly shifted over a portion of my savings. Not enough to raise questions, just enough to breathe. I started staying late at work. And not because I needed to. I wasn't working. I was sitting in my car, parked in dark corners of the lot, just thinking. Sometimes I'd drive without a destination. I'd circle neighborhoods I didn't live in. I'd sit outside 24-hour diners and watch strangers live their lives. I wasn't spying. I wasn't planning revenge. I just needed space. And for the first time in a long time, I gave myself permission to take it. Every time she kissed me goodbye, I wanted to flinch. Every time she texted, "Love you," I stared at the screen, wondering how many others had gotten that same line. It had become a default setting. Words on a loop. Not truth maintenance. A trick to keep the mask in place. But I didn't push. I didn't ask questions anymore. I'd already collected all the answers I needed. Now I was just playing along until the curtain dropped. She noticed the difference, eventually. A few days after I started packing things away, she asked if everything was okay. "You've been quiet," she said, studying my face. "I'm just tired," I answered. And I meant it. She nodded like she understood. She didn't. I don't know if she suspected I knew. Part of me thinks she'd convinced herself she was clever enough to hide it forever. That maybe, if she smiled wide enough, touched me just enough, she could preserve the illusion. But another part of me wonders if she wanted to be caught. If she was tired of lying but too much of a coward to end things herself. Either way, she didn't bring it up again. She kept pretending, and I let her. One night, I stood in the garage and stared at the shelves, full of little things we'd accumulated over the years. Paint cans from our first renovation project. Camping gear we hadn't used in 2 summers. A broken lamp we always said we'd fix. It looked like a life. Felt like a museum exhibit. I took a photo of it all. Not because I wanted to remember it, but because I wanted to prove to myself later that I'd let it go. Another night, I found myself sitting in our bedroom while she showered, staring at her dresser. The top drawer was slightly ajar, and a strand of hair, blonde, not mine, was tangled around a makeup brush. It struck me then that I didn't even know who she was anymore. I knew her routines, her cadence, her wardrobe, but the person behind the smile? That part had become a stranger. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Late at night, when the house was still, I'd write out my thoughts in a battered notebook I kept hidden under the floor mat in my car. It wasn't poetic. Mostly bullet points, observations, planning, proof that I wasn't crazy. One entry read, "You're not broken. She broke the promises. Not you." Another, "You're not unlovable. She was just unworthy." I reread them often, sometimes twice in the same night. I wasn't preparing for war. I wasn't trying to ruin her. I just needed clarity. And now, finally, I had it. For the first time in a long time, I could see the edge of the tunnel. And I was walking toward it, one quiet, steady step at a time. There were moments I second-guessed myself. Of course there were. Like when she came home early and brought my favorite takeout, just because. Or when she slipped into bed one night and curled against me like she used to. Part of me, the part still clinging to what we were, wanted to believe it meant something. But then I'd remember the scarf, the hallway kiss, the lies, the smile that wasn't meant for me, and the hesitation faded. I never told anyone the full story. Not yet. Friends noticed something was off. My brother asked if we were doing okay. I gave vague answers. Not because I was embarrassed, but because the betrayal felt sacred in a strange way. Like it belonged to me now. Mine to carry, mine to bury. And I was preparing the burial. I started researching divorce lawyers. Quietly. On my lunch breaks. Late at night. I read reviews, combed through firm bios, checked credentials. I made a short list of 3. One stood out. A woman named Deidre. 5-star reviews. Tough. No BS. Known for being discreet. I scheduled a consultation. During that first call, Deidre didn't flinch when I told her about the infidelity. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said, "Do you have documentation?" I did. Photos. **TS. Travel receipts. Timestamps. I sent everything. "You've already done the hard part," she said. It didn't feel like that, but it helped to hear it. She walked me through my options. We talked about assets, property division, timelines. She gave me language to things I hadn't let myself think about. Dissolution, filing jurisdiction, asset declarations. It was cold, clinical, but it felt like progress. At the end of the call, she said, "When you're ready to serve the papers, just say the word." I wasn't ready yet. Not quite, but I was close. I kept moving. I sorted through our joint accounts. Made a list of everything with both our names on it. Started mentally dividing things. Who gets the couch? The dog? The dining table we built together one summer. Sanding wood for hours in the garage. Laughing like idiots? None of it mattered. It was just stuff. And I was done attaching meaning to things that had outlived their promises. The night before I finally made my decision, she sat beside me on the couch, watching a show I wasn't paying attention to. She leaned her head on my shoulder. My arm went numb, and I thought, this is the last time. The last time I'd sit in this house, pretending we were okay. The last time I'd let her take my silence as permission. The last time I'd let someone who didn't value me sleep beside me. The last time I'd let love disguise itself as pain. And that night, as she drifted off to sleep, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, tomorrow. We met at a quiet cafe near her office, neutral ground. I picked the place on purpose. Clean, quiet, no sentimental ties. The kind of spot where people took meetings, not memories. I got there early, sat in the back corner, facing the door. I didn't order anything. My stomach was in knots. She arrived 7 minutes late, coat perfectly pressed, folder in one hand, phone in the other. Her hair was pulled back tight, the way she always did it when she wanted to appear in control. She spotted me, gave a half smile, and walked over like it was just another lunch break. Like this wasn't the moment everything unraveled. Hey, she said, like nothing was wrong. Hey, I replied, nodding to the seat across from me. She sat down, set her phone on the table face down, of course, and crossed her legs. So, what's this about? Her voice was calm, careful. Too careful. I could see her measuring me, reading the room like she was already anticipating the angle of the conversation. I didn't waste time. I reached into my bag and slid the folder across the table. Black, clean. Inside, divorce papers, separated into sections. One for assets, one for property, one for the timeline, one for the split. She looked down at it, blinked, then looked up at me again. What is this? I think you already know, I said. She didn't touch the folder, just stared at it like it might bite. There was a pause. Then she let out a short, almost disbelieving laugh, a single exhale through her nose. So, this is it? This is the start of it. She opened the folder and started flipping through the documents. Slowly at first, then faster. Her expression didn't change, but I could see the tension in her jaw. Her fingers curled tighter around the edges. She got halfway through, then stopped and looked up at me again. Is this because we've been distant lately? She asked, like it was some minor rift, a phase. Emily, I said, steady but quiet. It's because you cheated. She flinched, barely, but it was there, a flicker of panic behind her eyes. Her lips parted, searching for a response, something to deflect or deny. But I didn't give her the space to twist it. I know, I added, about the hotel, about Portland, about the man in the navy suit. I've seen the photos, the boarding passes, the messages, all of it. Her mouth stayed open, like she was still trying to form a rebuttal that wouldn't come. She wasn't a bad liar. She'd gotten away with this for months, but she wasn't ready for this moment. She sat back in her chair, jaw clenched. For a second, I thought she'd argue, that she'd launch into one of those carefully curated speeches she'd used so many times before, the kind that turned my questions into insecurities, the kind that made me the villain. But she didn't. She just stared down at the folder again, suddenly very still. How long have you known? She asked finally. Long enough. Silence. Then she nodded slowly, as if the game had finally run out of moves. Who told you? No one, I said. I saw you at the rooftop restaurant a few weeks ago. Her face froze. That was the moment it all clicked for her. I could see it, the ring in the wine glass, the sudden chill in my silence, the shift in my eyes. She replayed it all in real time, and I watched her connect the dots. She swallowed hard. I thought you were. She cut herself off. I didn't think. I know what you thought, I said. The weight of it settled between us. The woman who once told me she'd never lie to me now couldn't look me in the eye. And I didn't need her to. There was no redemption coming. No last-minute apology that would fix what had already been undone. You didn't even try to stop, I said. You didn't even slow down. She said nothing. Even after I confronted you indirectly, even after the ring, you still came home and kept lying. You didn't flinch. I didn't know how to stop, she whispered. That part hit harder than I expected. Because I believed her. She wasn't proud of what she'd done. But she also hadn't been willing to stop. I think somewhere in the back of her mind, she thought she could keep both lives going. Maybe forever. Maybe until I finally snapped and gave her a reason to leave. She finally reached for the folder and began to flip through the documents again. And you already filed? She asked, her voice low now. Warren. Not yet, I said. This is a draft. But it's ready. Her eyes skimmed the pages, scanning the asset list. I've been fair. Maybe too fair. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't trying to drain her or humiliate her. I just wanted out. Clean. Clear. Final. She paused on the page that mentioned the house. You're keeping it? Yes. She nodded again, more to herself than to me. After a moment, she set the folder down and folded her hands in front of her. Her voice came quieter now, almost resigned. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't respond. I thought it would be temporary, just something that would pass, something I could forget. You don't forget things like this, I said. You just bury them. I wasn't happy. You never told me that. I didn't know how. That's not true. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, her eyes weren't guarded. They were just tired. I didn't expect to feel anything when I saw you, she said. But I do. I waited. I feel ashamed, not for what you know, but for how long I let it go on, for how easily I let myself become this person. I nodded. That person wasn't invisible to me. I saw her. I just didn't want to believe it. She bit her lip and looked down. Are you sure you don't want to talk about this more? Before we do something we can't undo? It's already undone, Emily. The words landed like a slow hammer. She looked away, lips pressed together, blinking fast. There's nothing to fix here, I continued. I'm not here to get clarity. I already have it. I'm not here to forgive you. I've already started doing that. For me, not for you. She inhaled, shallow and quick. Her hands were trembling now. I thought we were stronger than this. I leaned forward slightly. You thought I was weaker than this. She didn't respond. The silence returned. She reached for her phone, glanced at the screen, maybe out of habit, then set it back down. Is there someone else? She asked. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. No, I said, but there will be. Someday. And next time, I'll choose someone who knows how to show up when it matters. Someone who doesn't use my trust as camouflage. She blinked hard. I guess I deserve that, she whispered. I'm not trying to hurt you, I said. This isn't about punishment. This is a clean exit. She nodded slowly. We sat in that cafe a little longer. The waiter came once, dropped off water, left us alone. No one around us noticed that a marriage was ending. No one saw the invisible rupture that had been forming for months, now finally given a name. After she closed the folder and slid it back across the table, she stood. I'll call the lawyer, she said. If you want it finalized fast, I won't fight it. I stood too. That's the plan. She looked at me one last time, as if trying to find the version of me she remembered. But that man was gone, or maybe he never existed in the way she thought he did. She reached out slightly, as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it and pulled back. Take care of yourself, Mark. You too, I said and meant it. Not because I wanted her to thrive necessarily, but because I didn't want to carry any more weight than I had to. She walked out first. I stayed behind, letting her disappear into the noise of the sidewalk. I sat back down, stared at the folder, and felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness. Just completion. It wasn't a blow-up. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet. It was clean. And it was over. A few weeks after the divorce papers were signed, I heard through a mutual connection that Emily and the man she'd been seeing were both fired. Internal investigation. Violations of corporate policy. Turns out their getaways weren't just moral failures, they breached contracts too. I didn't say a word, didn't gloat, but she started texting. First apologies, then explanations, then silence. I never responded. I didn't have to ruin her. She did that on her own. Watching from a distance, I felt a nothing. No joy, no revenge. Just confirmation that everything I suspected about who she really was, it had all been true. Sometimes I pass the cafe where we had our last conversation. I see the table by the window, her wine glass, that look on her face. But it doesn't sting anymore. No anger, no grief, just stillness. That day I dropped my wedding ring into her glass wasn't the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of self-respect. I didn't scream, didn't seek vengeance. I just walked away. She made her choice.